Hello, everybody. Good evening, and welcome to another one of these live streams with myself, Sam Gregory, and my friend, and potentially yours, if you're nice to him, Mr. Paul Sanders. Paul, how are you?
Oh, really good, Sam. It's so nice to see. Do you know, this year I have missed you like you would not believe. You've left a big Sam-shaped hole in my life.
I have that effect. It's called the
Do you?
Sam Crater. And yeah, we haven't caught each other for this crazy year, have we? But it's nice. We've managed to catch up a couple of times here on Facebook. And we thought we'd start with us in full regalia, full screen. Look at Paul. Look how
Regalia. I know we should
handsome
have
he
our
looks.
t-shirts on and everything.
Yeah.
But you're looking proper handsome and everything. Your hair's got thicker
What's
on your
left of
chin. On your chin.
yeah. What's left of it certainly is getting thicker. The bits that aren't coming back are still not coming back. But there we go.
Oh, you're something out. Don't you worry.
Good evening, everybody. We have you guys are saying hello already. This is fantastic. If you've joined us live, do let us know where you're viewing us from, and we will try and give you a little shout out. As ever, Paul, well, not as ever, but as ever, there will be a virtual tour, but we have Paul with us, and we're going to do Romania this evening. And I can see some common names: Dorchester, that's me, Bristol, Maxfield, Cheshire, Fife,
Is that the those
Blackpool.
yourself?
Sometimes it's the only way, Paul.
Yeah.
Central Florida,
Oh,
Milan, Ferndown, and some people who I know have been to
oh,
Romania with you, Paul, at some
yes. Some
event.
people that we both know. Yes.
Yeah, so that's really
Oh,
cool that they're
all of
watching.
those. It's so nice when people actually log in to listen live, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know, bear in mind, tonight they could be watching Bake Off,
Bake Off.
but then, that's Paul and Prue, and here's Paul and Sam.
Everyone needs more Paul and Sam in their life. That's pretty straightforward
Everybody,
as far as I'm
everybody.
concerned.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do over the course of the next hour, if you've watched this before, you will know, but we're going to walk through some imagery from a particular location. This is a location where Light and Land do a tour, and on this occasion, we're going to be in Romania. And I'm really happy I'm doing this one with Paul because A, I always love working with Paul, but B, I know Romania is a real favorite of his, and I want my job is to kind of dig into that and get a little bit deeper on it. So, Paul, let me just share the images and then we can get into that. So as ever, people, yes, record Bake Off, watch it later. That's absolutely right, Shay. You've got the right
Yes.
idea. If you have any questions throughout the evening, not Bake Off related, because I can't help you there, but Romania/photography related, then Paul and I will very much be able to try and help you. And do let us know. Anything you want to know, hit us with it. But Paul, just before we actually get into the actual images individually, and we've got a good number, we've got 15 or so nice images to look through tonight.
Yeah.
Why Romania? What is it that's really captured you about it as a place?
I first went to Romania in the very early 90s as a news photographer. With the paper that I was working with, it was just after the fall of communism, and we were so taken in by the friendliness of the people. It was just incredible, and I've had a love affair with the place ever since. So it's the most beautiful country. The people are so friendly. The food is incredible. And it's sort of a bit of an undiscovered gem, really, because in one way it's a very modern country now, and it's sort of part of Europe. But once you get out of the big cities, it's still really traditional, and you really make your own way there. And I've just seen that Daniel, who is the guy, who's the guide in Romania and a really, really good friend, is also watching. So now I've got to make sure they get all the names right.
Pronunciation, everything. I want everything spelled out, Paul. I'll pull you up on any errors, or Daniel can.
No abuse, Daniel. But it's one of those places that I'd mentioned to Light and Land a while ago, and then Daniel got in touch with them at the World Travel Market, and we sort of teamed up, and it's been fantastic. It's an amazing place with such a rich variety of people, landscape, architecture. I just love it. You know, I mean, you won't be surprised that most of the pictures this evening are black and white because it's me, but actually it's a country that is so colourful. You know, the people are colourful, the landscape is colourful, the food is colourful. I think anybody who's been with me to Romania over the past couple of years, you know, will, you know, can only marvel at the sort of richness of the images they come back with. And every experience is unique. No two trips are the same. They have the same elements, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, thank you for the little outline. I think it's really a nice way to start because there is a mix of images tonight. And for me, I'm going to say off the top, I enjoy the way that those different types of images, including some portraits, which I think is great, and we'll talk about that in just a second, actually, really kind of tell the story and give you some of the atmosphere. I feel that very much from these, Paul. So let's get into it a little. And I have just popped a little poll up. Hopefully, although there's a little tech issue with that, I think, depending on what you're watching this on, your device, we're just asking the question, have you been to Romania? So if you can see the poll, drop us a yes or no vote on that, and I'll announce that in a moment. Paul, though, you've mentioned the people, and I'm really happy that you've got 4 or so portraits in tonight, but tell me why it's so important to get to know the people and tell their story a little bit with the images as well.
well, I always think that, you know, as photographers, we're storytellers, but we're only storytellers if we actually listen to the people that we're around. You know, none of the people that we meet on tours are just photo opportunities. We're, you know, we're there to meet them. We're there to grow as people, and the people that live there have shaped that landscape. You know, and Romania has had sort of many people coming over borders and invading it and being repelled and all the rest of it. And I love sitting and talking to the people. You know, the experience of chatting to them, or at least having Daniel chat to them on my behalf, really, because my Romanian is fairly poor. But the whole point of it is that you develop an understanding of how they live, of their culture, of the way they work, of the way they get food, of the way their families interact. And that enables you to get better photographs. It enables you to connect with them on a much deeper level. And it's so much more about the experience. I mean, so many people go to countries to collect pictures, but actually, really what you should be collecting is experiences, and then the pictures will follow. You know, I mean, this chap here, he's called Emil. I can't remember what the dog was called. Maybe Daniel will remember. And I mean, I've visited Emil and his family with Daniel so many times now that, you know, they invited me to their last daughter's wedding. I mean, Daniel keeps getting invited to the weddings anyway. But it's quite funny because when they introduce you, the little boy is called Emil, his dad is called Emil, and his granddad is called Emil. So all you have to do is call out Emil, and one of them will turn around and make a photograph. But they're a gypsy family. They're building their own home. And every time I've gone there, there's been a little bit more, you know, everybody's grown up a bit more. They keep changing. But as I've gotten to know them, you know, the conversations are just really fun. They're such lovely people. The girls dress in the most amazing sort of coloured skirts, you know, which is sort of traditional wear, but they wear it all the time. And it's quite a weird thing when you go there and you listen to them, because their marriages are still arranged, and it can be quite difficult if you're, you know, a very kind of modern, forward-thinking sort of Westerner to see sort of young girls at the age of 12 or 14, you know, sort of telling you they're going to be married soon. But it's a you know, culturally it's fascinating to talk to them. And little Emil here, they'd only just got this dog when I went the first time, and so that's him basically just against the unpainted plastered wall in the extension that they just finished building of their home. You know, but we've been chatting, and I just asked him to just have his picture taken, and he just literally straight towards me, and they're all so engaging, so fascinated. And we always take them a set of prints when we go back, so it's really lovely, you know. every time you see them, they've got more and more photographs. I mean, Daniel's quite prolific with his photography, so he's always given them. He shoots color, I shoot black and white. They did complain actually when I took them black and white pictures because they said my life wasn't colourful enough. I mean, what is that all about?
What little they know, eh? What little they know.
It's like they just don't know the richness of the subject.
It must be nice going back and seeing them as you have over repeat times, and when you know, especially when you're making portraits of people, you can really see them change, obviously physically, but you know, you read a lot from people, don't you, from a portrait sometimes, especially if you know them more deeply. So has that been quite a nice experience to see that as the kids have grown up, especially?
Yeah, it's a really nice thing that, you know, when you go back 2 or 3 times, they welcome you literally with open arms and sort of kisses. And there's no sort of, oh, they're here just to take photographs. It's all, you know, how are you? What have you been doing? You know, and it's a lovely chat. And we sit around the table and they offer drink. And it's gotten quite difficult now because I don't drink. And they insist on giving you drink. So we have to pretend that I'm ill so that I can't drink. But they would you know, they would happily have you drinking until you fell over. You know, because for them, they're as fascinated by us and what we bring, and you know, and the conversation that Daniel has with them as we are by them. You know, and it's fabulous to be invited into their home and just sit and chat. And as I always say to the people that come on the tours, they're not there for photographs. You know, they're normal people living their life. And I think it's you know, we have to respect that they're not sort of models. They're not kind of reenactors. They're real people living real lives. You know, and that sometimes is difficult, especially if you're, you know, I think we were discussing before we came in about the way people who mainly shoot landscape, how they approach photographing people. You know, but it's the same. You know, you study your subject, you wait for the moment, and you connect with the moment and press the shutter. And normally it comes, you know, when they're relaxing, once they've started to relax around you.
Yeah, it's a two-way street, isn't it? These sorts of scenes, and you can't go in and just take. You have to have that, you know, form of communication, even if it's not through language. We understand visual communications, don't we? Sometimes wherever we might be in the world, and it's a respect thing, like you say. So I wanted to move us on because I love this shot. So I wanted you just to explain who this character is.
Now, Daniel will probably shoot me, but this is the English translation is George. I'll stick with the English translation. He's one of the shepherds who are up in the hills above the town of Biscuit, and we stay in Biscuit. It's a beautiful town. It's a village with really just kind of one main street and a couple of little side streets. And the joy of this village is that every morning, just around dawn, they take the cows out. Their cows come out of the houses into the main road, and then they take them up to the pasture. And then we take a horse up, well, a set of horses up to the high pasture where the shepherds are. And then for comedy value, we watch the shepherds milking the sheep, which is always quite an interesting experience. But he's one of the guys who just sort of rounds the sheep up for the guys to milk, and he doesn't actually say very much. He sort of shouts a lot. But these guys, they live up there. They have their beds up there. You know, the first time I went up, they cooked us dinner. The local mayor was up there having a bite to eat with them. And we take this horse with a little carriage behind it. I mean, don't be misled when I say carriage. It's not a Downton Abbey carriage. It's basically a trailer. And we sit in the trailer and the horses take us up onto the high pasture. It takes about half an hour, 40 minutes. And, you know, like I say, it's all about the experience. And clattering along in a trailer is quite exciting at times. You know, but also if you get caught in the rain, there is no shelter, as one group found out a couple of years ago when they decided to leave early and we were sheltering under the tree. Always take the advice of the guide. The guide knows best, and if he says wait, it's going to rain, you wait, it's going to rain.
Yes, very sensible advice.
Yeah, this, we go up to this high pasture, and it's so rich with photographic opportunities, from the still lives in the little hut where the shepherds live and work, to the portraits of the guys, to, you could do a really wonderful little sort of photo essay. It's just amazing. I absolutely love it. You get lost in the moment up there, and then you come down through the hills. And in May and June, the flowers there, this is all wildflower meadows, because all the grazing is wild. So if you like wildflowers, Romania is a place to go, because there's every kind of wildflower. It's just amazing. And the butterflies as well. I'm not much of a nature photographer, but the amount of butterflies that you see, and bees, and sort of flowers and herbs and all the rest of it, growing freely, and then they're all harvested and they go into the, if you have the local honey, you can actually taste the wildflowers and the honey. So it's just amazing.
I don't want to go too far off piste, but you mentioned earlier that, I'm going to do it anyway. You mentioned earlier, obviously, Romania, and maybe we need Daniel in a way, but it's a country not necessarily in transition, but there's big contrasts, aren't there, between maybe the more modern urban areas, and then out here it's much more still traditional feeling. So I wonder if we're capturing a kind of a passing moment in time here, because I wonder how the future is for some of this more traditional agriculture as we go forward in the next decades, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there's a chance that it's got to modernize. I mean, I enjoy photographing, the way they farm at the moment, but it will eventually modernize. But it's not the wealthiest country. The people aren't massively wealthy. So, the cost of bringing in sort of mechanized farming is quite hard and quite high. I mean, I think there are 4 shepherds up there looking after, several hundred sheep and horses. What would happen to them? I don't know. But it also has a tradition of a sort of a way of trying to keep alive some of its traditions. It seems to recognize there's a value in the tradition as well. I mean, Prince Charles is a massive fan of Romania and has a house in Viscri. And he's been, he's sort of behind trying to keep them in touch with the value of the traditional things that they have, while behind the facade allowing sort of modernization. It's a very interesting. It is a country of contrasts, and it's you can tell by you can tell just by the way that people are that some of them are very kind of traditional, very old-fashioned. Go to the city, it's like any city. Go to Bucharest, it is McDonald's, Starbucks galore. But once you're outside of that, it is very much it's just like a painting. I mean, you don't get haystacks this beautiful anywhere else in the world. The haystacks in Romania are works of art. I love the falling down nature of them. Daniel's always amazed by the way I get excited over haystacks. He seems to think I've got a bit of a haystack kind of fetish. But I just love them because we don't get them here. Everything here is mechanized. You can't see the human connection. Whereas there, that it's been built by a man with a fork or a couple of men with a fork, tossing straw up, and it's so beautifully organized. And they're dotted across the hillside. Everything is sort of used and used and used and used and used, and you really get a feel for the hand of the people that have made and have shaped things within the photography. And that's what I really love about it. There's a richness and a depth to the pictures that is there because the situation's not sterile. It's got the fingerprints of the people that built that all over it. All I did was stand in a field and look at it with my mouth open, telling Daniel how amazing it was. It's just incredible. The sort of the painterly, picturesque nature of it, shows a beauty but a hardship at the same time.
Yeah, even down to the fence and the slightly you know, the texture of it, the non-uniformity of it, and like you say, it shows the kind of hand touch, and that's just such a cool shape, even just visually,
Yeah,
isn't it, to play with?
yeah,
You know, it really is a beautiful thing to work on. I mean, only you, we can see the touch of summer flowers there in the foreground, but only you would you would take that the way you took it. Actually, interestingly, so I just out of interest before we move on, I'm sorry, because you and I could probably do like
right.
12 hours. We won't, but we
Oh
could.
no, yeah, and I was
Um,
never enough.
no,
Ask
no.
Charlie for more.
um, I know, well, I think I know. I mean, when you're shooting this at the time, are you shooting with, I know you always have your black and white hat on, so to speak, but I know you're also a fan of kind of finishing and editing things pretty quickly, you know, either in the
Yeah,
shot at the time or straight after that day, that evening, whatever it might be. But you kind of envisage this as you see it, don't you? Or is this something that comes
yeah.
later in the creative process, or a bit of both sometimes?
No, no, I see it as black and white. I mean, Daniel's always criticizing me for seeing his country in black and white. Um, I shoot it in black and white, have the camera set to black and white, and you know, I only see things really in black and white. I can appreciate the color, I can appreciate the beauty of the color, but for me, the yeah, the texture and the content with black and white just speaks volumes. You know, you can imagine the colors. Your subconscious puts the colors in. You know what color hay is. You know what color a green field is. You can imagine what color the flowers might be and what the stormy sky is like. I've tried to help by split toning the picture a little bit.
Mm.
I mean, that's as far to color as I go. I love my retina. They're 52 years old. You know, I mean, I don't want to burn them.
They've got you where they've got you, so they're doing all right, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Just a couple of quick things I'm going to pick up on the comments. I've put another poll up for those of you watching live. It may depend on your device. I don't control that. I'm afraid it's the big Zuck over at FB Towers. But I've asked, do you guys shoot in black and white live view / preview mode ever? Because Paul's mentioned there he walks around with that in. I tend to do very similar in lots of places nowadays as well. And I find that that's one of the great things about mirrorless, isn't it, Paul? You can see that straight away through your EVF or through your live view, even with the
Yeah, exactly.
filters, and you know, you can go for it. So just asking the question about that. The previous poll was, have you been to Romania? 80% of people have not been to Romania. And Ralph mentions on the comments, if too many photographers people go, it may spoil it, like so many other areas. It's very difficult to get the balance, and that is obviously true. And that comes back to that respect word, doesn't it, Paul, that we were
Yeah,
talking about
yeah,
earlier. Have you
yeah.
seen more people, any other people out there shooting? You know, from a, you know,
There are other groups that go. There's Americans and Germans that go. You know, but we only take quite a small group, and we only go once a year. And Romania is a massive, massive country. We don't explore you know anywhere near all of it.
mm,
We tend to be sort of in the kind of the Transylvania area. Um, and yeah, you're right. I mean, if too many photographers go, we'll get spoiled like Iceland. And but the interesting thing about a country like this is there are no big set pieces.
mm,
You're very reliant on the natural changes that happen. So the haystacks are never in the same place. The people are always a bit different. So we do change it up a little bit each time we go. Daniel's always full of ideas. So and now
look at that. I thought it was a self-portrait for a minute. I've seen you
it is
slumbering away in
it
the
is
mornings.
it is that's me. I mean that's me as a bear. Do you want to cuddle?
Yeah,
You do. I know you want to cuddle, really.
I think I'm
I
happier on this
go.
side of the water from that bear particularly. But I mean, we've gone off piste here. This is not your normal cup of tea. Not
No,
that there is no normal
no.
cup of tea. That's what's so great about it. So tell us about this
Yeah.
situation.
So um, we go to a place called the Liberty Bear Sanctuary, which is not a zoo; it's a bear sanctuary. It's basically it's like a retirement home for bears. Romania had, until it joined the EU, a huge problem with people capturing bears as cubs in the wild and then using them to draw in members of the public. You know, so you'd find a bear at a petrol station or a pub, and they'd be chained up, kept in really horrific conditions. And you know, now the bears just get they've sort of mostly been handed back. But a lot of the bears are really traumatized by the experience. You know, a lot of them have health issues or mental health issues. The Liberty Bear Sanctuary is one of the most beautiful places to visit because you get to walk around in a very small group. They won't allow you to go without a guide. They only let you in sort of a couple of times a day. And there are bears and wolves and things in there that are in their natural habitat, away from people, but within the sort of space of the sanctuary, so they can be rehabilitated. And it's an amazing experience, and people still bring bears that get injured to them in the hope that they can help them. You know, but this bear's got proper depression from the treatment that it had. You know, but some of them are much jollier. You know, but we've been there and just seen walk. You know, there are bears that will still trace the size of the cage on the floor that they were in, even though they've got all this room to wander around. They've worn away the grass in a circle the size of the cage that they used to walk in. You know, so it's quite sad. It's a very moving experience, and the presentation beforehand, before they show you around, because it's a charity, is really quite. It's heartbreaking. You know, but it's also really beautiful to see the way that they're trying to build it. And the place is all about the bears. You know, they don't want you getting too close. They don't want you jumping around. They tell you to be quiet. It's really, you know, it's a really wonderful place to go. And it's a place I always look forward to going to. You know, because you don't get to see bears in close up at all. You know, you may go there and not actually see a bear at all because they might be hiding in the woods. But often they come down because, you know, they know they're going to get fed at some point. So they see. I mean, I can't even shoot bears in colour.
No, I really enjoy the black and white treatment of it. I mean, it's like you said, sometimes we, you know, and I can't speak for everyone else, but I know you and I, Paul, when we're doing the tours, we try and find some cultural and social links to try and engage people in that local area. You know, this is a great example of that within nature and wildlife as well, and there's other examples of it around the other places that you and I do, especially. And I think that's a really important thing, to have those moments, isn't it? You know, because photography is moments, but life is moments, and when the two things come together, that's the nirvana, I suppose. So whilst Paul's talking bears, I'm just gonna quickly mention actually a couple of comments that came in, and I'm so happy, Daniel, that you're with us on the comments. So Daniel is the guide that Paul, and photographer that Paul knows in Romania and works with Light and Land over there, and he's just answering a couple of questions about the Roma people, and I'm really glad, Daniel, that you could pick that up, obviously, as a man on the ground who's going to know the full answers there. So welcome, and thank you for coming along, Daniel. As we move on from bears, this I love as well. It's right on my street. Boom, boom. And I suppose this it isn't literally, I mean, this isn't in Dorchester, but visual awareness is something we talk about, isn't it? Constantly being attentive and receptive, I suppose, to shape and line and everything that's around you. So, you know, obviously here there's all sorts going on. So just unravel it a bit for us, Paul, and maybe where you are as well.
Yeah, so this is in the town of Cebu, where we start most of the tours. And Cebu is a fortified town. And it's a beautiful place, and it has these massive walls that go around with all these towers, and this particular tower, which was a battlement, is now an opera house. But I really like the arrangement of the windows and the little painted bit on the side. Now the painted bit is actually yellow, but it's rendered so quite darkly because of the way that I processed it. using black and white filters in Lightroom. So I process this from the raw. But I just love the randomness of the windows. The depth of them with the shadows, and I just enjoy sort of this kind of abstraction of architecture. I could photograph Cebu all day long quite happily. And it's a town with cobbled streets, narrowed alleys. It has a very German feel to it. The people that built it were largely of German ancestry, and it's a bit like being in some kind of picture postcard at times. But in the summer, the main square is just filled with performers, and people say it's great for street photography as well. It's such a rich place for photography that you could literally stay there for the entire tour and just photograph that area. And we don't spend very long there. Daniel walks us around and shows us the highlights, and explains to us about how the town came to be, and what it means and what all the different structures there are. So it's a really interesting place to start, because of the way Daniel introduces it. And he's not one of those guides who overpowers you with information. He gives you the information you want, and if you're not paying attention, he won't talk to you. It's absolutely fine. But he likes ice cream, so if you're not asking him questions, he'll eat ice cream.
Well, it sounds like my kind of man. I'm an ice cream guy too.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love ice cream? So?
If they don't like it, they shouldn't be on a tour with you or me, that's for sure.
No, exactly,
Okay, so I wanted to we'll get back out into the countryside, and this is another one that I've seen a few times back and forth on the tour notes and things like that, and I always enjoy this one.
Am I boring you?
No, I'm conscious of the time, that's all.
What time is it?
We're on a deadline here, Paul. It's 8:30. We're halfway through. We've done 7 of 17. But it's all good. So tell us a little bit about this. Let's actually start with, and I don't like to talk about the technicals, that, and you and I could do a good hour without ever even mentioning that, but this split toning field generally, and I'm not sure whether that's necessarily what's going on here, but you do talk a lot about shooting in black and white, which obviously you do, but you aren't, or let's say you're open-minded to those slight color tints or tones, however you want to call it. What dictates that? Is that to do with the place, to do with your feeling at the time? Take us into that a little bit.
Yeah, I tone based on how I perceive the hint of color on the morning or at the location. That particular morning it was quite chilly, and but the sun was just sort of creeping through the clouds, so it's got a kind of cool blue and a tiny bit of warmth. I never know whether split toning is right or wrong, to be honest, but I sometimes just tweak it a little bit just to give it a little lift. So for me, it just adds just a tiny nuance of how I was feeling at that particular time when I photographed that scene. And I love this area. This is Pestera, up in the mountains, and it's all rolling meadows, little barns on hills. Usually it's misty in the mornings, not always, but it's all rustic fences, lone trees, grassy slopes. The play of light during the day in this place is incredible. You get lovely shafts of light up valleys, and then 5 minutes later it's changed, something else catches your eye. And because we're always shooting from a high position, everything is an opportunity. I always get really excited when I'm here. It's a wonderful place. I just love these little tracks and the fences with the flowers. And that particular morning, shooting into the light with a little bit of mist was fantastic. Very exciting. I get excited. A curved path. Give me a curved path any day, and a bit of fence and a bit of string, and I am as happy as Larry.
Well, I think it's rhythm, isn't it? There's always a kind of, some images just have a natural flow, a movement through them, and obviously with this line up here, we've got the lovely line of the string. the track, obviously, and then this is a very naughty curve away over here going on too. Even the fact the tree leans slightly that way, everything takes us through there, doesn't it? And there's, you know, I mean, it's a really difficult question because some things like this feel subconscious at the time, don't they? But I mean, our goal is to try and be conscious of it if we can when we're there. So, you know, do you feel that sort of movement when you're in it, or is it ever just totally subconscious, those things, do you think?
I think it's a mixture of two, because you're drawn to something, aren't you?
Mm.
You know, when you're out photographing, you become aware of something, and it's isolating what it is that's calling to you to be photographed. I mean, it's not a traditional image in many ways because it's composed right to left, and we read left to right, so it's completely backwards. And I quite like that. So that's very conscious, but really I couldn't do it another way because the path goes that way. So, you know, if I wanted to make it read the correct way for a Western civilization, I probably would have had to have flipped it, and that would have just felt wrong. So I like it going that way, and I was very aware that it was going that way. And I deliberately put the fence coming almost out of the corner on the right hand side, that little electric fence. You know, because to me it was quite important that that was there, because that's the sort of modern nudge to farming, as the traditional, you know, statement on the left with the old fence. I love the way everything's leaning to the left, saying, you know, whatever it is, whatever you're interested in is around this corner, but you never get to see what it is.
No, that's
and
right.
To be perfectly honest, the only thing that's around that corner is a very big sheepdog.
Okay.
Don't go any further than the tree.
You're better off just enjoying the view, let's be honest.
Just enjoy the view,
yeah. And when you get these lovely conditions, it just diffuses that distant point. And so, our mind is left to wander, isn't it?
Yes.
Now, talking of wandering minds and devilry, as we sort of were, but we are now, this is a very dramatic image, a very dramatic way to deal with this location, and actually a very dramatic location. So tell us about this location.
So this is Bran Castle in Transylvania. People will have possibly heard of Bran Castle. Daniel will hate me for saying this, but basically this is where the vampires live. And you know, if you have ever read Bram Stoker's Dracula, it's basically based around this. This was part of the inspiration in parts of the book. Bran Castle is a medieval type building that sits surrounded by mountains and pine forests. And there's a really lovely location that we get a slightly elevated view. We actually go and stand in the garden of a lovely old lady called Maria, who was the wife of the former mayor of Bran, and we photograph it from her garden. So, and you know, she sort of comes out and says hello, and we're sort of on her lawn, looking down. And I say lawn, I mean it's basically a patch of grass outside of her bungalow. And then, you know, we photograph down, and it's one of the few places that ends up being a kind of a line of tripods, because I'm not a big fan of lines of tripods. But it's such a beautiful place, and often we get really amazing light there. You know, but this day we had really amazing rain, and I love the way the castle stands out. And again, this is the joy of black and white, because the castle is quite grey. So I've just kind of messed around with the contrast and knocked the trees back by using a red filter. And then that's darkened all the trees down in this. And then all of a sudden, you've got this quite ominous picture. And I find that quite exciting, that you can just sort of play around, play around with it a little bit. But I really like it there. And the village is full of, when you drive past it, the village is full of tourist shops selling everything from, sort of military helmets to full suits of armor. If you want to put that in your hand luggage to get home, some people might find it useful. I don't know.
I thought don't you do fancy dress on the last day or something?
Well, we could do. I think you should come out, Sam. You come out and I'll clap you in irons.
I'll happily come there. I think it's a great example of being aware of the place and then, you know, creating imagery that kind of makes sense to that. You know, we know that all, okay, we're joking a little bit about the background of it, but you know, it's a foreboding potentially
Yeah.
kind of place. And I suppose, like Paul's alluded to there, there's things you can do visually maybe to kind of build on that concept. And with that, I mean, you've again, it's a rule breaker, you know, big heavy blacks, you know, really, you know, but it absolutely works for the reasons that we've just discussed. You're getting a bit of love on this one, Paul. I love the contrast to the crisp
Thank you.
castle and the sky. That's Helen.
You've got to remember, right? The important thing to remember with, if you're going to print your pictures, is you pay for black ink. So you may as well use it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what's the point of having loads of detail in all your blacks? If you've got black ink, use it. Make the paper really heavy with it. I don't care. Just, you know, just enjoy it.
The northerner in me fears all that black's going to cost a fortune. Anyway, that's fine.
Well, there is that. It is expensive.
Adriano says, stunning image full of Transylvanian foreboding. Absolutely. Well, very nicely put, Adriano. And this next image actually is another one that captures the kind of the spirit of a place at the time. You know, we can see through the tree there, this kind of wind obviously roaring through. So, I mean, this would be a case where you know, we've talked about connectedness to the people, a bit to the background, but sometimes the elements are there and you need to work with them. Is that fair to say, as opposed to sort of fighting them?
Yeah, I think you've got to be aware of what it is that you want to show of a place. You know, I love the rustic nature of Romania, but also, you know, sometimes we can leave a scene too static by freezing everything. I love movement. I love watching the movement in trees. This tree, when I was looking at it, reminded me of a wild elephant. You know, it just has that sort of feel of it kind of tossing itself against the kind of restraint of its roots in the wind and what have you. And you know, perhaps I'm mad or I had too much ice cream or coffee or something, but every time I look at it, I see an elephant. And when I see things like that, I love to try and photograph them. You know, but for me, the movement created by the wind and everything is just beautiful. I love it. And I can still feel that wind and the sun. You know, it's fabulous. And it's the experience. I'm always trying to photograph the experience, because if you don't have the experience, your pictures are just empty. You know, they're soulless. They have nothing. Now, it might be that I'm the only person in the world who can see an elephant and can feel the wind. But at the point I pressed the button, I was the only person feeling that. You know, I'm sure the others who were there have their own interpretations of it, but I was experiencing that moment for myself. And it doesn't matter to me whether other people like those pictures or not, because, you know, photography is a very personal thing. It goes very deep, and you have to trust that your own instincts about it are right, that you're enjoying the experience and you can photograph it in a way that resonates with you. That's all I try to do, is just enjoy the experience. And if a great photograph comes from it, or a wild elephant comes from it, then fantastic. But if I don't get a picture, it doesn't matter, because I've had the experience.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Perfectly makes sense to me. And
I'm going to get a cravat, Sam. I'm going to get a cravat and a beret.
I think you'd look
because
beautiful.
if I'm going to start talking like that, I need a velvet smoking jacket.
Yeah, you need to up your bling on the velvet. Let's just say that. No, I think it's a great point. And what I suppose I'm interested in is why, you know, you can have those experiences in different places, but I just get the feeling that you really connect to Romania, and there's certain other places that I know you feel strongly about. But so I wonder what it is specifically. I know we mentioned a little bit about the top of the contrast of it, and about still there may be more, you know, the touch of man, maybe more the simplicity in the landscape in the countryside. But you know, that's a difficult thing to bring through in images, isn't it? That connection. We see it a little bit with the people, and we'll come back to that in a sec. But I realize I'm not really asking you a question there, Paul. Sorry, I'm just rambling at you. But For everyone that's
What's
watching, thank you for bearing with me. And if you
ramble?
are, so if you are with us, do, oh, Adriano can see an elephant in their tree trunk masquerading as a tusk. Yes, but particularly.
Yes, exactly. You see, the man Adriano is a man of vision.
He is. He is. I fear he may have been on a workshop with you. That's why. So let's just quickly talk about this one, Paul, because we've used these fences, and you've used these fences as excellent, and the tracks as, you know, visual cues, I suppose, haven't you? Why is it that we find these so appealing? Is it that sense of walking in and being there and sort of inviting the viewer on with us on that journey through the picture as well?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this, an S curve is just lovely. You know, I mean, this is kind of slightly backwards, but I love the way they just take you into the picture, and you can imagine yourself just kind of walking through there and over the hill to, you know, a little
Another
hotel
sheepdog.
or something with another sheepdog. Yeah, being chased by a sheepdog. But it's that sense of the kind of, you know, the wandering soul, isn't it? You know, it's you on the road, you know, lost in the countryside, and it feels quite safe. It feels quite homely. It feels inviting, and I like that. I'm always drawn to gravelly paths and, you know, roads as well. This is quite a difficult one to photograph though, because on the right hand side of this is actually a disused tennis court, weirdly.
Okay.
You can just about see on the right hand side of the road, you can just about see one of the struts for the netting, but there's a proper tennis court that's slightly overgrown on the right hand side. You know, but again, judicious use of graduated filters and things to tone things down allows you to focus just on the road, and takes you, you know, up to that little puffy cloud right on the top of the hill, and then you kind of get lost into the mountains. And I think I've always had a slightly wandering soul. So if I see a little path like this, I just love spending a bit of time with it. They're like little poems to me. Little paths. They're just like little poems, little bits of poetry.
Very nice way to put it. And just as we move, we've got a couple more portraits. And thank you very much, everyone, for sticking with us as we talk through these. There's a 4 or 5 images left, and then actually stick around, because I need you guys at the end. You're going to have a choice about what we're doing next week, believe it or not.
Get
Yeah.
90 odd different answers.
No, it's an A or B choice. So no, I'm not going to walk into that one. But we've got a couple of really characterful looking portraits coming up, and I think there's a couple of things. We've talked a lot about the connection, and I'd like to know a little bit about what this chap does. He looks like he's been very hard at work. Let's just say that. I think someone's mentioned about your uses of square and shooting portraits in square. You see a huge amount of that, maybe a little bit in the past with black and white studio guys using Hasselblads and Hollywood people, etc. But do you favor that for a particular reason on these, Paul, just out of interest?
Right. I shoot square because it saves turning the camera up to do uprights.
Sensible man.
I mean, and that is basically it. Everybody thinks there's some great artistic reason. There isn't. I don't like turning my camera on its side on the tripod. So I always shoot square. If I shoot square when I've got it in my hands, I don't have to turn it up and be uncomfortable. I can just, you know, stay in one position. So it's laziness really that makes me shoot square. You know, I apologize to every photographer out there who knows there's probably some great reason that photographers should shoot square, but to be honest, it is laziness. It saves me thinking about which way around to shoot it.
I think you're being a bit naughty though, because although you say that, and I know it's true because you are a terribly lazy man sometimes.
Yeah.
What I would say is that you are composing to the square all the time, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a great example of that because of where you put things, and his pose just absolutely works in that. You know, doesn't it as well?
Well, I mean, he's done all the work in this picture. You know, this is Matty. He's a blacksmith in Viscary, and you know, he's a bit of a character. You know, he's a Marmite kind of chap. But he sort of bangs away with his hammer and tongs and flames and horses and things. And then after he's finished his work, he comes and stands outside and has a cigarette. And literally, he's come and stood outside, and I've been watching through the door as he's made something, and then he's just put his arms up. I haven't said, can you do this or can you do that? Because I like people to just be themselves. And I think when we over direct people, unless you're doing fashion or a wedding or something like that, when you start to direct people, you lose them. It becomes more about you than them. When you allow them to be themselves and you wait patiently for the moment, you will be rewarded. And it's great that he's got this lovely barn that they create a nice frame. He made a very graphic shape in the thing. And because the barn inside where his workshop is really dark, he stands out with the front lighting. And I'm always thinking about how the lighting works on them. But again, I don't worry about how dark the shadows go. It just doesn't matter. The important thing in this is it's his eyes, his hands, the sweat on his t-shirt. I have no interest in the shadows.
No, it's all the story, isn't it? And that's excellent, Pearl. I hope everybody picked that up there. I hope you were paying attention to what Paul was saying about it not being about you and it being about them, and that's a really good point. Well made. What I would like to do is get my teeth in, is ask a question to the viewers out there, because I know a lot of people do struggle with making portraits of people. Maybe a lot of landscape photographers, a lot of outdoor photographers, or whatever you might be. It is something that comes from the connection, as we talked very much about at the beginning. But I'm just going to throw that out there as a question on the poll. Again, for those watching live on certain devices, you should see that question pop up. Do you feel comfortable asking for portraits? And maybe, I had to use a small amount of words because it doesn't quite always work like that. But Paul, while the votes are coming in on that, as we've just got the last few pictures here, we're going to run a bit long, but that's all right. No one's got anything else exciting to do. It's pitch black. The world's in chaos. This is beautiful for loads of reasons. The texture, the setting, the way his hands are holding that crook, and the little bit of maybe a hanky it looks like. And this guy's seen some stuff. So tell us about this chap and a bit about the background.
So you remember the boy and the dog, Emil?
Mm.
Well, this is Dan Chu, and he is Emil's great grandfather. I think that's right. I think it's great grandfather, not great. And whenever we go to their house, he nearly always pops around. And often you'll find, sort of 4 or 5 generations of this family will be there, and it's incredible to see the support and the love and the humor between them. But he sits and observes. When everything's sort of going off, and he just sits and watches. And I was just sort of fascinated by him watching us photographing the rest of his family. And I just turned around, and he was just sort of sat, and I looked at him, and he looked at me, and I just nodded, and he smiled. So I just took his photograph. I really like people looking at me. I think for me, there's a direct connection when people are looking straight at you, straight through the camera, boring into my soul. And I just get so excited when I feel that connection. It's like electricity. And I think you get it with patience. People will look to you. You can ask them a little bit if they'll just look. But because of the language barrier, sometimes it doesn't happen. And sometimes if you're just patient, they will eventually look at you. And again, I've moved my position so that the background is just the out of focus logs in the barn, and the light in there is obviously darker than the light on him. So I'm always thinking about the lighting ratio. So I like the faces to be lighter than the background, because your eye is drawn to the light, so it goes in. But his beard's magnificent, Sam.
I know.
Are you aiming for a beard like this?
You've got to know your limits, Paul. I'm not there. I'm
Yeah.
nowhere near it. So no, I'm going to
Yeah.
let him steal that, and I'll just keep
He's
this.
got more hair on his chest than you've got on your chin.
Look, he's a hairy man. There's no doubt about that. No, it's magnificent, isn't it? And it's yeah, the whole thing is great because it just tells lots of stories, little mini stories within it as well, little stars of within the portrait. I just Paul, on the question I asked there about people feeling comfortable, and I've put asking for portraits, and even those three words could get queried perhaps, but 70% of people say no. So that's the vast majority do not feel comfortable. Now, I know it's not as straightforward as having a set piece because that is totally incongruous to what you've been talking about of having that connection with people. But just if you can, I mean, is other than what you've outlined, which I think has been quite useful already, you know, is there anything you would say to people who are maybe feeling a bit nervous about it or don't quite know how to try and make that connection, but would like to explore, you know, adding this element to their photography because they understand the importance of it and want to make that connection with people?
The key is to be interested in the person. If you're interested in them, and don't make the approach about the photograph. Make the approach about the person. Be interested in them. You know, it starts with hello, and it starts with, you know, my name is, or, you know, what is your name? And you can do it with sort of sign language. You know, we're lucky enough to have Daniel, who, you know, who's brilliant at helping us sort of introduce to people. But when you're with people, just show an interest in them. You know, you don't have to speak to somebody in fluent Romanian to show an interest. You can just point to something and pick it up, and then they will talk to you. You may not understand a word that they say, but it doesn't actually matter too much because they're engaging with you because you are interested in them. Once they're engaging with you, you know, they will keep engaging with you unless you're rude to them. Photography is about building relationships. You know, as a news photographer, it was always about the relationship. You go into somewhere and you build a relationship with a person that you're photographing really quickly, to get the photograph you want. It's the same with this kind of work. I'm not naturally a portrait photographer. I don't like asking people for their photograph. And part of the reason I'm patient and wait is I'll talk to them and then I'll just sit back. I'm the sort of person that you generally see at a party, standing in the corner just watching. And I tend to do that when I'm out. I like to disappear a little bit. I'm not very confident. But when I'm with people that I'm interested in, then I have confidence in the fact that I'm fascinated by what they do. I'm fascinated by how they live. I don't care about the photography. I care about what they do. And once that goes to the side, it's not about, can I take your picture? It's, can I be interested in you? Yes, I can. You are an interesting person. So tell me about your life. Tell me about why why you dress like this. Tell me about your hat. Tell me about your, you know, the copper things in the background. It's always about them. And there have been times I've been to places where I've wanted desperately to photograph somebody, and it just hasn't. But I have the most amazing time listening to them. I come away having learned a lot, and that to me is far more important than than the coming away with a wonderful photograph. So I like that relationship building, and I'm better at building relationships.
I didn't find that on Apple Music.
Sorry.
not with Siri, obviously.
Not with Siri, no. I enjoy that whole sort of experience, the experiential side of photography, whether it's landscapes or people. It's why do I find you interesting? I find you interesting because of this, this, and this. Do you find me interesting? And generally, they'll find you interesting because you've taken the time to be interested in them. And that's how you get them to do what you want.
Yeah. And we had to have this in because it's colour, which cover your eyes, everybody. Paul left a colour one in. He obviously
Does
didn't.
anybody like my colour picture?
He obviously didn't hit the convert to black and white before he sent it to me. I
This
nearly
was-
converted
this
it for
was
you.
before.
Just
Yeah, yeah.
no,
This is a bit. It's an older one, but
I
I've
love it.
always seen colour.
It needed to be in colour for me because of the colour in it and what that adds in various parts of it. But I mean, that again, it's all different, isn't it? And I'm going to just keep us honest for time reasons. So we've done a little bit about the portraits tonight, and thank you everyone for bearing with us while I sort of dragged that out of Paul, and some excellent advice there, people. Yeah, someone else loved your colour image, Paul. Sorry. So we've got to 2021. Try something different.
Thank you, Ray.
So let's just finish up. We've got a couple. I believe they're actually. I know the next two are from the same location. Is this the same place, Paul? Can you? Okay,
Yeah.
great. So just give us a little bit of outline, and I'll just flick us through these gently.
Okay. So we generally, up to now, we've always finished the tour at a place called the Raven's Nest, which is a wonderful, wonderful accommodation high up in the hills. Can really only be reached by a 4x4. So we go up there, and the people that own the Raven's Nest have basically transported part of a traditional Romanian village, bit by bit, up to the top of a hill and built a stockade around it. And you essentially go and live in barns like the one that's pictured at the moment. But they're not open like that one. They're beautifully furnished. The food is all organic and fantastic. And the Raven's Nest sits high on a mountaintop looking out over these wonderful fields with these lovely open barns in. 9 times out of 10 when you go there, it's misty in the morning. I wouldn't say every time because I've been there a couple of times and it hasn't been, but most of the time I've been, it's wonderfully misty. You get this lovely atmosphere. The mist rises from the valley and just sort of rolls around the hills. And the longer you wait, the more mysterious it comes on, and then it'll disappear, and then it'll come back, and then it'll fade away, and it's just the most beautiful, beautiful place. If you like misty mornings, then that's the place to go. And even in the middle of June, you still get some mist. And everywhere you look, there are pictures. It's almost you need 3 or 4 days there just to photograph it how you want to. But one of the great, great joys about the Raven's Nest is the fact that their hot tub sits on top of the mountain, and you look out at sunset over the mountain as the sun goes down from the hot tub with your drink in your hand. What better way is there to end a tour than sitting in a hot tub on top of a mountain watching the sun go down? Tell me, Sam, do any of your tours do that?
We start in hot tubs on my tour, Paul. No, I think that's a pretty good way to end it. It's a pretty good way to end the tour. Hopefully, if there's water in that hot tub, otherwise it's just a bit awkward. But no, that sounds pretty awesome, and I really love those last 3 because that when you have that winning combination of mist, light, rolling. Well, it's not rolling, but curvy kind of mountainous, hilly areas. It can be intoxicating, and that's goes back to experiences, doesn't it? You want to take the pictures there, but you want to live in that moment, and you want to feel that. And I suppose that's what we're always sort of striving to bring back in the images somehow, if we possibly can. So no, good stuff, Paul, as ever. It's always great value with us. Are we the Morecambe and Wise of Light and Land? Has been that's a bit tough. I don't know.
I don't know about the Morecambe and Wise. I think we're just the Wise of Light and Land.
Very nice. Probably more sort of low rent Hale and Pace if I had to choose one. But thank you everyone for watching along, and thank you to Paul. But before we go, don't leave just yet.
Yes.
People out there, I need your help. Your country needs you. And the question is, and I'm just fiddling as I get to it now. Next week is going to be me doing a pixel to print. So I'm going to talk you through an image, a little bit about the background, depending on which one you choose here, and then talk through the processing and the printing. So my question to you, which I've just put in the poll for those of you that can see it, as I've mentioned, depending on your device, is I want you to choose which picture I am going to talk about, process and print live to the airwaves of the nation next week. So you've got a choice here. You can pick A, the olive trees, and B, the urban black and white scene. Now, Paul knows where these were shot because
Yes.
we weren't there together, but it was somewhere we
weren't.
have been together.
Yeah.
So these were both shot in Puglia in southern Italy. And I would be interested to know what you guys want. So get your vote in. I'm just going to let that run for a second. Paul, though, before we go, big
high pressure on the vote, aren't you, Sam? Blimey.
I'm flexible. I didn't want people to choose on the night. That would have been a bit stressful, but I can cope with a week beforehand.
No, I think make it much more interesting. Get them to choose on the night.
Yeah, maybe I'll work up to that. But Paul, thank you. It's always a pleasure. I hope everyone doesn't mind our banter. We always enjoy working together, and I think everybody gets the idea about why you love Romania. And a lot of what you say is actually obviously to do with photography generally and how we approach it. So there's loads I think people can take away with that.
Well, I really hope people have enjoyed it, and there've been so many names in the comments thing that of people I've been away with. So thank you all for listening. How many more times you'll get to hear me and Sam waffling away, I don't know. Because just a final thought: the Romania tour next year is my final tour for Light and Land. So book your places now, folks, because it won't happen again unless Sam takes you. And it just won't be the same. He doesn't like ice cream, really.
And he puts the hot tub at the beginning. But if we have enthused you about Romania, which Paul and I joke, but I actually wanted to go with Paul. I was trying to wangle it out of Light and Land. I'll go and do some behind the scenes or something. But it's 14th to the 23rd of May, 2021. 14th to 23rd of May. There are a couple, not sure how many, but there's a little bit of space left on that tour. So couple of places. Okay. So if you go to the Light and Land website, you can search by Paul's tutor page or by location, and 14th to 23rd of May to Romania. It's a kind of a once in a lifetime thing potentially, and somewhere that a lot of you haven't been, so something to consider. Right, the votes have come in on the image. So it looks like we're doing the trees, Paul, which is good. That's an interesting one.
I would have voted for the trees as well. Good.
All right. So 60% of you wanted trees. You're going to get trees, and I'm going to tell you all about the olive trees. It's a sad story, I'm afraid, but I'm going to inform you about it, a bit like Paul has been informing us about Romania. But from us, that is it. Join me next week, 8 o'clock, Tuesday night, Pixel to Print. I'm going to talk you through this image from Puglia and the beautiful olive trees that are down there, a little bit of the background. The week after, we've got something with myself and Margaret Soraya. So that's cool. And I've got Andy Farrer coming up. We've got Charlie at some point soon as well. So there's a few more coming. We will be with you all the way to Christmas, just like the other thing that's with us all the way to Christmas. But on that bombshell, we will speak to you later, and I shall see you all next Tuesday. Goodbye for now. Goodbye, Paul.
Bye. Bye.